Please be seated. Are we ready to bring the jury back in? Yes. State. Okay, let's go ahead and bring them in. Please be seated. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Officer Smith.
Afternoon.
Have you ever actually been on patrol with your husband? I understand that you're married to the first responding officer to the scene in this instance, Timothy Smith.
That is correct.
Which?
He is my husband.
Right. Have you ever, I'm just curious, have you ever been on patrol with him?
I've done ride-alongs before.
Well, I meant patrol as a police officer.
No, sir.
Any reason why? Does the department keep you from doing that on purpose?
I'm not a police officer.
What would the better title then be than officer? Sorry.
Crime scene technician.
Okay. Is that your title at work, crime scene technician?
Yes, it is.
All right. Can I just call you Ms. Smith? Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. I want to talk a little about in general, and then we'll talk about some specifics. If there is a question I ask you that you don't know but you can figure out by looking at something, just say so, and we'll give you a chance to do that. If there's no way you can because you don't have the material available, say that too, and we'll move on. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
So you measure the scene prior to the collection of evidence?
That is correct.
And you record those measurements in notes, ultimately then on a diagram?
That is correct.
Could I then ask you for some measurements so you could tell me how far it is from certain points to other points so that we can get oriented as to the scene itself?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Marker number 1 is the key, the Honda key with the little flashlight on it. And marker 6 is where Mr. Martin's body was identified. Are you able to tell me roughly how far it is from marker 1 to marker 6?
No, sir.
Would referring to any of the diagrams or your sketch help with that?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you estimate it for me?
No, sir.
Who would be able to do that was connected in the case?
The FDLE personnel that did the total station.
Is that Ms. Orta?
Yes, I do believe so.
On your left are some diagrams. Is that what's been generated by the total station system?
Yes, that is correct.
And is that the work product of Ms. Orta?
Yes, it is.
So you didn't personally participate in generating those diagrams?
That is correct.
So whatever you could tell us about them would be what you remember from the scene or what somebody told you that she did?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there any way you can look at that diagram? Is there a scale or something that would help identify the distances that I'm talking about from, say, marker 1 to marker 6?
No, there's not.
Did you take any measurements that night yourself?
Yes, I did.
And did you record them in a report of some kind?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you have that available?
I do not have the sketch available, no, sir.
There was one of the exhibits seemed like it was drawings. I can maybe find the number, or if you recall. This is 168.
Thank you.
Is 168 your drawing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now that you have that in front of you, are you able to give me, was that designed from a fixed reference point?
From 2 fixed reference points.
All right, so that doesn't help you measure from one marker to the next?
That is correct.
Okay. So we then would have to go to the total station data to do that?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's no help at all. Sorry. There's an exhibit with some swabs, other than the ones I have. From the crime scene standpoint, the measurements that you took from the fixed reference points were then designed so that with the total station data, you would be able to identify specific measurements if asked later on.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The photos, though, were photos that you took?
Yes, that is correct.
The exhibits that are in evidence here today are photos that you took there at the scene?
That is correct.
So you were there personally looking and identifying and photographing each of the exhibits and the markers where they were pictured here?
That is correct.
Okay. So you had a hands-on view of the actual evidence?
That is correct.
Marker number 1 is this this Honda key with the little flashlight. I think you said it was on. Was that something you witnessed or something somebody told you?
No, I witnessed it.
So apparently it had been on then prior to your arrival.
That is correct.
You didn't have any reason to think that anyone had tampered with the evidence?
No, I did not.
No reason to think that anyone had been picking up or handling any of the evidence prior to your arrival?
No, I did not.
I think you, Your husband, Tim Smith, was the first responding officer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So your understanding was that he was on site very, very soon in these events.
That is correct.
So law enforcement took charge of the scene right away.
Yes, that is correct.
That's important for you, isn't it, later on, that the scene not be contaminated?
Yes, that is correct.
That all of the evidence that you collect actually be where you see it that it originally was.
Yes, that is correct.
Do you think that the only evidence that may have been moved, if you will, was Mr. Martin's body?
And the Arizona Tecan.
Was it your information that that had been in his clothing and removed by responding officers?
Or responding medical.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Martin's body was covered by that blanket that's been described when you got there. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it remained in that condition until the arrival of the medical examiner investigator?
Other than photographs beforehand.
When in time did you take the photographs of Mr. Martin's body?
I don't recall if it was before the medical examiner's office arrived or when they arrived.
Might it have been in conjunction with them then?
Yes.
Wouldn't typically in that situation, if the medical examiner's investigator is there, that person might retrieve personal effects, for example, and give them to you as the crime scene tech.
That is correct.
Is that what happened here?
Yes, it is.
So as items from pockets, the money, the change, the lighter, etc., was removed from pockets, it would have been handed to you, logged in, and packaged?
That is correct.
And then it's likely that you took the photographs of Mr. Martin's body in conjunction with that process being done by the medical examiner's investigator?
Yes, that is correct.
You wouldn't have removed the blanket yourself to take photos prior to the medical examiner's investigator getting there, would you, typically?
Sometimes.
Did you in this case?
I don't recall.
In any event, there's nothing that deviated substantially from the protocol that you're used to in connection with these kinds of things.
That is correct.
You mentioned that you searched for blood on the sidewalk by walking the path with a flashlight. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you walked across two sides of the T?
That is correct.
Had anyone pointed out to you specific areas in which to look?
I don't believe so.
So you made just what you would usually do then, sort of a general pass in the vicinity to see if there was any obvious blood?
That is correct.
So you didn't do an exhaustive search, I take it?
Myself and several officers on scene did a very long search.
I meant for the blood. When you were walking down the sidewalk with the flashlight, the idea was to see if there was obvious blood?
Yes.
And it was raining?
That is correct.
And the event itself would have been passed by a couple of hours at least by this point?
It's possible.
Mm-hmm. There are chemicals that can be used by crime scene technicians that would react in the presence of blood. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You're familiar generally with how that works?
Yes.
In this instance, there were no chemicals used specifically on the sidewalk or anywhere else that might reveal the presence of blood.
That is correct.
When you went to the medical examiner's office in Volusia County to collect evidence, that included the clothing, I take it, that Mr. Martin was wearing on the evening of February 26th?
Yes, that is correct.
That's what you were told anyway.
Yes, that is correct.
Right, you didn't open the packages or examine them in any way?
No, I do not believe so.
You made the comment, maybe it was in passing, about maybe you repackaged some things. What were you referring to, if you remember?
The FTA card, some standards that came back from the medical examiner's office.
Okay, not the clothing.
No, not the clothing.
As far as you know, you never opened the bag that contained either any of the clothing.
Yes, that is correct.
Did the clothing that you collected include Mr. Martin's pants?
I do believe so.
Uh-huh. Have you seen them here in the courtroom?
I don't believe so.
Your Honor, could we check the record? Are the pants identified as an exhibit? I'm sorry. Ms. Smith, do you remember whether you retrieved the pants from the medical examiner?
I do believe I did.
Would you well, I guess you wouldn't recognize them, or would you, since you never saw them?
Only by the photographs.
All right. Could I show you what's been identified and entered, actually, as 157? Is that correct? Thank you. Could I get some help? Just right there, just show them to the witnesses. Do you recognize those to be from the photographs, the pants that Trayvon Martin was wearing the night of February 26th and that you picked up from the medical examiner's office?
They appear to be similar.
And they are in evidence by stipulation, I believe.
Yes, they are, number 157.
Thank you. If we could talk a little bit about some of the forensic swabbing that you did. Do I understand that as the crime scene technician, you would take the physical item itself and use a swab like we have here and rub it on the item?
That is correct.
The idea would be if there's some kind of biological evidence there of some sort, it would be on the swab.
That is correct.
And when it's submitted for processing, is it just the swab that's sent to the lab?
Yes, it is.
So the physical item itself is not, for example.
That is correct.
So other than perhaps a general description of what item or what part of the item was being swabbed, there's no specific spot identified where on the item the swab was made.
That is correct.
For example, on the bag of Skittles, the candy, you would have made one swab from the entire package?
It's possible.
Well, I have Exhibit 169, and you could tell me if you made more than that.
Just one swab.
And likewise for the flashlight?
Also one swab.
Thank you. When you got to the scene, I think the flashlight is marker number 5. Is that right?
I believe so.
It was not on, correct?
That is correct.
Was the purpose of the swab of the Skittles and the flashlight for touch DNA or some other kind of DNA?
I believe it was touch DNA.
Is that the same with the firearm?
Yes, that is correct.
And with the firearm, the swabs included one from the trigger, one from the grip, one from the slide, and then one from the holster. Is that correct? I'm referencing exhibit number 170.
Yes, that is correct.
You're not aware of any other swabs that you didn't include in evidence?
That is correct.
And likewise, then, would it have been the swabs that were tendered to FDLE rather than the firearm itself?
That is correct.
After you finished the swabbing is when you did the latent print examination, or did I get that backwards?
No, that is correct.
The procedure for making one of the swabs is using a swab with sterile water and then just wiping it on the surface.
Yes, that is correct.
And you wipe it, I suppose, as thoroughly as you can,
Yes, that is correct.
and then you're done.
That is correct.
Okay. And then that goes in the tube or whatever, and it goes off to the lab.
Yes, that is correct.
You aren't necessarily seeing anything.
Not all the time, no.
Or did you in this case on the firearm?
I do not believe so.
Can you tell me a little bit more about touch DNA?
In regards to collecting or in general?
Well, am I correct? I think you said basically that touch DNA is sometimes, if somebody touches a surface, it's possible to get DNA.
Correct, if enough skin cells are left behind.
So is that where it comes from?
The touch DNA?
Right.
Yes, sir.
So the basis of the DNA, the touch DNA, is that somebody touches an item and under some circumstances may leave behind some skin cells?
Yes, sir.
And if there are enough skin cells left behind, then sometimes at our state of the art, if you will, in the DNA analysis, there can be a result.
Yes, that is correct.
You don't do that analysis yourself.
No, I do not.
So the touch DNA based upon skin cells, for example, would be subject to being wiped off.
It's possible.
If somebody else handles the item, for example, they could wipe off whatever skin cells were there, correct?
It's possible.
When you say possible, you mean within your world, not just some sort of anything's possible, but you take that into account, don't you?
Yes.
So from a forensic standpoint, it's entirely possible that someone, well, first of all, someone could touch something and not leave enough skin cells behind for there to be any DNA analysis possible.
That is correct.
That's part, okay. And then even if they did, if somebody else handled it, they could wipe off the DNA that the other person left.
They could.
In fact, I suppose they could replace it with their own.
Or add to it.
Sure. Okay. So the idea of the touch DNA isn't that it's something that's on there for sure and stays no matter what happens.
Right, that is correct.
You got the firearm after it had already been taken into evidence, correct?
That is correct.
And you were provided it at some point at the Sanford Police Department?
That is correct.
So the firearm had been recovered at the scene and then provided at some later time to you?
That is correct.
If we could talk about the photographs for a minute that you took. Not the photos at the scene, but the ones at the Sanford Police Department. Are you able to tell us when it was that you took the pictures of Mr. Zimmerman?
It would have been sometime after 11:15 p.m. on the 26th.
Would that information be embedded in the data of the image?
I do believe it could be.
You used a digital camera, obviously.
Yes, I did.
So you record it on what, like an SD card or something, and then transfer it to an evidence file?
Yes, that is correct.
By the time you had gotten to the Sanford Police Department, Mr. Zimmerman had already been there several hours. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
He had already been provided access to a bathroom to clean himself up.
That I don't know about.
Did you ever see the pictures of him at the scene?
I honestly don't recall.
You, though, took pictures of him as you saw him somewhere between 11:15 and, we'll say, midnight, for example.
Yes, that is correct.
Is that pretty standard in your work as well?
Yes, it is.
If you have an individual in custody that was involved in an incident, it's not uncommon for you simply to document their condition by taking a number of photographs.
That is correct.
And you, as Mr. Guy suggested, you would want to get sort of a head-to-toe view.
Yes, that is correct.
In this instance, Mr. Zimmerman's injuries were on his face and head.
That is correct.
Could we display some of the photos, please? May I get some assistance there? I can provide the exhibit number, I think. Sure. Thank you. Are you able to see the exhibit number in the right-hand corner of the photo, Ms. Smith?
Yes, I am.
All right. I'll back up to a point where I think these start. We're looking at image number, State Exhibit 66. That's a picture you took, correct?
That is correct.
And you see that sort of lump on the top right of his head?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, and you saw it that night too, right?
Yes, I did.
67 shows blood dripping behind Mr. Zimmerman's left ear. Is that correct?
That is correct.
'68 is of the left side of his head. Do you see that raised area above his ear?
Yes, I do.
And did you see it that night?
Yes, I did.
This is a better angle. Do you see the left side of his head there? You see that big lump on the left side of his head above his ear?
Yes, I do.
And did you see it that night?
Yes, I did.
How about on the top, on the right side of his head? Do you see that lump on the top of his head?
Yes, I do.
The top right side, and you saw it that night as well.
That is correct.
Is that a better picture of the lump on the right side?
Yes, it is.
And you can see just a bit on the back of Mr. Zimmerman's head. It looks like there's a lump there. Did you see that too?
Yes, I did.
This would be of his right side again, closer to the front. You see that lump?
Yes, I do.
And you see the punctate type abrasions in the temple area.
Yes, I do.
And you saw them that night too.
That is correct.
Likewise, on the left side of his head, you see similar abrasions?
Yes, I do.
And just one more. This is the back of Mr. Zimmerman's head in exhibit number 74. You see the lacerations?
Yes, I do.
You saw them that night as well, I take it.
Yes, I did.
And you see the lumping? You see the lumps around the abrasions and in general on the back of his head?
Yes, I do.
And you saw them like that as well that night, correct?
That is correct.
May I have just a moment, Judge?
Yes, ma'am.
Like the item second.
Thank you. Can you redirect, Ms. Judge?
Let me show you states 149 and 150. Will you explain to the members of the jury how you work with personnel from the medical examiner's office in removing items from a victim's body, their person?
They would go through the pockets, collect anything that is out of the pockets, and return those over to me so that I can collect and put them into evidence.
And why is it that you don't just go through a victim's pockets yourself and start pulling things out?
We need consent from the medical examiner's office to do so.
Does the medical examiner's office actually have custody of a deceased person before and when they get there?
Yes, that is correct.
So you have to get authorization from them to manipulate the body or go through the clothing?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And the items in the composite, the earphones or the earplugs, the lighter, the photo button, and the Skittles, were those items that were removed by medical examiner personnel and then furnished to you?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. If you would look at the screen, State's Exhibit 22, the button appears in that photograph, does it not?
Yes, it is.
All right. And I'm going to circle a part here. Does that appear to be the edge of the Skittles bag?
Yes, it does.
And that would still be in the center pocket of Mr. Martin's hooded sweatshirt?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Your Honor, that's all I need the lights for. Thank you. And when you went to the medical examiner's office to collect other items in the case, did you also collect Trayvon Martin's clothes?
Yes, I do believe so.
All right. Your Honor, may I have her step down?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Mantoff,
Step
assist me.
down.
Somebody's. You previously identified Mr. Martin's pants?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take that over. All right. Do you recognize this exhibit? And Mr. Mantoff, if you call out the number for me.
States 155.
You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what does that appear to be?
The sweatshirt.
Let me sit this down for a second. Could I just get you to confirm that with the packaging as to what that was?
Yes, that would appear to be the same.
All right. I can get you to stay there for one more moment. Mr. Mantoff, will you call out that numbered exhibit if you get a chance?
States 156.
All right. You recognize that as being the undergarment or under sweatshirt that Mr. Martin, that you collected from the medical examiner's office?
Yes, it does.
All right. And will you confirm that also with the packaging?
Yes, it is.
You may resume your seat. Thank you. Do you have your report with you?
Yes, I do.
Could I get you to refer to page 2 of that? You were asked a question about the time that you took the photographs of the defendant at the Sanford Police Department, and I'd ask you to refer to your report and tell the members of the jury whether or not you can narrow down the time from when you arrived until the next time that you registered as a way of narrowing down when you took the photographs.
On 1/26/2012 at 23:15, which would be 11:15 p.m., is when I responded to the Sanford Police Department.
And what did you do when you got there?
I took the photographs of Mr. Zimmerman's injuries.
All right, to your memory, did you do anything else before you took the photographs?
No, I don't believe so.
And what's the next time recorded in your report?
2/27/2012,
At what time?
12:35 p.m.
All right, so that's 35, is that 35 minutes after midnight or is that the next morning?
That's the next morning.
All right. You were asked about the search for blood in the case. Were you assisted when you searched for blood?
Yes, I was.
By whom?
A few of the officers on scene.
And were those officers using flashlights?
Yes, they were.
And were you using a flashlight?
Yes, I was.
Did you see any blood on the sidewalk in the area that you searched?
No, I did not.
To your knowledge, did any of the other officers see blood on the sidewalk that was searched?
Hearsay.
Sustained.
Were you notified of any other blood at the scene?
No, I was not.
Let me just ask you one more thing. You know, if I may approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Let me just hand you these real quick. 143 and 142. You talked about processing those bags. Is there any residue or effects present on those bags when you were processing them?
Yes, there is.
And what's that?
Black colored residue.
All right, and can you just kind of hold that up from where you are and just show that to the members of the jury? So the white bag has some discoloration, makes it appear somewhat gray,
Yes, that is correct.
and the brown bag the same?
Yes, that is correct.
And that discoloration would be an artifact from your processing those bags for latent prints?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Your Honor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
Just one moment. No, Your Honor, thank you.
Nothing further.
Thank you very much. May Technician Smith be excused?
She may.
Thank you very much. You are excused. Call your next witness, please.
They would call Salim Bahadur.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. afternoon.
If you can get a little bit closer so that all the jurors can hear you, and if you could just state your name for the record and spell both names.
Celine Bahador, Selene Bahador.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
I work for a hospital.
Okay. And you work there as an IT analyst.
Yes.
Have you been working there since 2004?
Yes.
Are you married, ma'am?
No.
Do you have any children?
No.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but do you currently live in Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
Okay. How long have you lived in Seminole County, Florida?
9 years.
And has that been since about 2004?
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
Philadelphia.
And did you go to college in Philadelphia?
Yes.
Where did you go to college there?
Temple University.
Tell us briefly about your education background. What kind of degree did you get there?
I have a bachelor's degree in health information management.
I want to draw your attention back to last year, 2012, specifically to February of 2012. Were you living at that time at 2841 Retreat View Circle in Sanford, Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
Back in February of 2012, how long had you been living at 2841 Retreat View Circle?
4 years.
Okay. And did you live there with anyone?
My sister and my niece.
Okay. Is your sister older or younger than you?
Older.
And your niece is about how old?
13 at the time.
Okay. And your niece, how is she related to you? Is she your sister's daughter, or is she another niece through another family member?
Sister's daughter.
I want to focus, if we could, on the evening of Sunday night, February 26, 2012. Were you home at that address at 2841 Retreat View Circle?
Yes.
And was anyone home with you that night?
Yes, my sister, her friend, my niece, her friend, and my sister.
Okay. So your sister and then your niece and your niece's friend?
Yes.
Okay. Where you were living at that time in February, is that a townhouse?
Yes.
Or a townhome?
Yes.
Can you briefly tell us about the townhome? Is it upstairs, downstairs?
It's bi-level, yes.
Okay. And are the bedrooms upstairs?
Yes, 3 bedrooms upstairs.
Okay. Is there a common backyard that you all have access to?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the access to the backyard, is there also a porch in that residence?
Yes.
Do you have a sliding back door?
Yes.
Is the porch that is in back of that residence enclosed, or is it just open?
It's enclosed.
And how is it enclosed, ma'am?
It's enclosed with...
Is it like a screened in, or is it glass?
It's screened in with a door.
Okay. Now, at around 7:10 p.m. that Sunday evening, what were you doing?
I was in the kitchen.
Okay. I neglected to ask you, the kitchen, am I safe to assume that is downstairs?
Yes, downstairs in the rear.
Okay. And so if you walk in the front of that residence, is there like a foyer and then a dining room or living room area, and then the kitchen would be to the rear?
Yes.
Is the living room area also adjoining in terms of going out to the sliding glass door?
Yes.
Okay. In that kitchen, is there a window in the kitchen?
Yes.
And is the sliding glass, is it a glass door in terms of you can actually see through it?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned your sister and your niece's friend were home that evening. In terms of the time that I'm asking you about, you mentioned you were downstairs in the kitchen. Did you know where your sister was?
She was upstairs. I don't know where.
Okay. And do you know where your niece and her friend were?
Yes, they were in my niece's room, which faces the front of the home.
Now, that evening at that time, back in February of 2012, was it dark already outside around 7:10 p.m.?
Yes.
And in terms of the weather conditions, can you tell us if it had been raining or not?
It was raining.
Okay. Can you tell us in terms of, was it like pouring rain? Was it intermittent or what?
It was intermittent. Around 7, it was still likely raining.
Okay. at some point, did you hear a noise outside?
Yes.
Okay, and when I say outside, in terms of your residence, was it in the back or was it in the front?
It was in the rear.
Okay. And if you could, as best you can recall, the noise that you heard, can you describe that to the jury, please?
It was not clearly distinguishable, but it sounded like no or That's
Okay.
what it sounded like.
And when you said it sounded the noise like no, like N-O?
Yes.
Or ooh, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also hear some kind of movement outside in the back of your residence?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe that to the jury, please?
It sounded like running from left to the right in the rear pathway.
Okay. And when you say from left to right, if I were in your residence and I was looking outside from the porch, are you talking about from the left to the right? If you were
Yes.
looking straight out into the backyard?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say it sounded like running, what do you mean by that?
It sounded like something hitting the concrete. It sounded like running.
Okay. Could you tell at that time whether it was an animal, whether it was a person?
Just from listening, no.
Okay. And could you tell that whether it was one animal or one person, or whether there was more than one animal or one person?
No.
Okay. But it was definitely, if you were looking at the back from left to right, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you say from left to right, are we talking about from the left of the back of your residence,
Yes.
going across the back of your residence towards the right, towards the T, I guess they call there?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of hearing that noise of some type of running, and also the word or something that sounded to you like no, were you able to, did you look outside at that time?
I looked out the window, but I couldn't see anything.
And why could you not see anything?
Because from looking out the window, you have an obstructed view. You really can't see further down. You can just see right across or a little further down. But
Right. Did you end up moving from where you were in the kitchen window to another part of your residence?
yes, sir.
Okay. And where did you move from the kitchen window? Where did you move to?
The sliding glass doors.
Okay. And in terms of if I were looking in your residence, the kitchen, would that have caused you to move, if you were looking out to the back, would that have caused you to move to the right of your residence?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, when you moved to the sliding glass door, did you end up looking outside at that time?
Yes.
And if you could, describe to the jury what you saw at that time.
I saw what looked as figures and arms flailing.
Okay. Figures, meaning more than one figure?
Yes.
Okay. And flailing, if you could describe that to the jury when you say flailing arms, what do you mean by that? Actually arms moving? You tell us as best you can what you described.
It looked like arms moving. That's
Okay.
what it looked like.
All right. Did it look like two individuals?
It did, yes.
Okay. And at the time you first observed the two individuals, were the individuals erect, standing? Were they on the ground? Were they crouched? How would you describe the individuals?
They're in a standing position.
In terms of the individuals, could you distinguish, or did you get enough of a close of a view in terms of, let me rephrase that. Was the view such that you could actually identify the individuals involved?
No,
Okay, and why was that?
it was too dark.
And by the way, I'm assuming when you moved from the kitchen to the sliding door, were you timing yourself? In other words, did you look at your watch and say, it's going to take me, let me see how long it takes? Were you timing yourself?
No,
Okay. If you could, estimate as best you can how long it took you to move from the kitchen where you were to the sliding glass door, if you can.
maybe about 15 seconds.
And you've stated that you believe that it appeared to be two individuals outside, is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you moved from the kitchen to the sliding glass door, did the noise that you hear continue? And I'm talking about sounds, or did it stop?
From what I remember, it continued.
Okay. Could you make out any other words or any type of other sound in terms of the noise other than noise out there?
No.
When you went to the sliding door, did the noise continue at that time too?
Yes.
Did you hear screaming out there? Or tell me what you recall hearing out there.
I just heard what sounded like no.
Okay. You mentioned some interaction between two individuals and the arms flailing. How long did you stay there looking at what was going on outside?
It might have been about 15, 20 seconds.
What did you do then, ma'am?
After looking,
Yes, ma'am.
well, I went back to the stove to turn the stove off.
Okay. And going back to when you were looking outside and you observed what you've already described, were you able to observe the two individuals enough to be able to give a clothing description of the individuals?
At that time, no.
Okay. You mentioned were you able to see the individuals' faces?
No.
Okay. And in terms of you were looking back in your sliding glass door out outside into the backyard, you mentioned they had moved left to right. Where were they when you observed them from the sliding glass door, when you say that they were, their arms were flinging? Were they on the pathway? Were they on the grass? Where were they?
When I saw them, they looked like they were on the pathway.
You mentioned going to the stove. Did you remain there, or did you end up going back to the sliding glass door?
After I took the stove off, I went back
Okay.
to the sliding glass.
And did you look outside at that time?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, when you're looking outside at that point, are you still seeing the two individuals out there? Or what do you see?
Once I took the stove off,
Yes, ma'am.
there was someone laying in the grass.
Okay. At some point prior to going to the stove, and while you were looking out the first time at the sliding glass door, at some point out there, did you see anybody else enter the picture? And what I mean by that, anybody else come into the backyard other than the two individuals that you mentioned?
There was two other people also looking out.
Okay. If you could, as best you can, tell us where those two other people that were looking out, where they were positioned as best you can.
One was right across from my home, looking out the glass door, and the next was right next to the home right across from mine, and that person actually came out on the porch.
Okay. That person that came out on the porch, did you see that person do anything other than come out to the porch?
I didn't see them do anything.
Do you hear him say anything?
Yes.
And I apologize. I neglected. I should not have led you. When I said he, that person that came out to the porch, could you tell whether that person was a man or a woman?
It was a man.
Okay. And when you said he came out, tell us if you can, he said something, tell us as best you can what you remember that person, the man, saying.
What I remember him saying was, "What is going on out here? What's going on? Do you need me to call the cops? Do you need me to call the cops?" He said it twice.
Okay. And did you see that person that came out onto the porch, onto his porch, or the residence where he came out of the porch, did you see that person remain outside, or did he go back inside?
He went back inside.
At some point when that happened, did the two individuals that you described as arms flaying with each other, did they remain in an erect position, or at some point were they in the crouch or on the ground?
I just remember them standing.
Okay. Did you keep looking at those individuals the whole time, or did you end up going back to the stove?
After he said what he said and he shut his door and went back, I went to take the stove off.
You mentioned after taking the stove off and I know you didn't have a stopwatch, but can you estimate how long it took you to go back to the stove? Was it, you heard about the same 15 seconds, or did it take you longer or less? Did you run to the stove? How?
Well, it probably took me less than 15 seconds
Okay.
to go take the stove off because
Okay.
I didn't know what was happening outside.
Okay. And when you say you took the stove off, you mean you turned whatever you were cooking off and moved the pan somewhere else? I'm assuming it's a pan, but maybe not.
Yeah, I just took the stove off to go back to the door.
Okay. At that time, when you went out to back to the sliding door, did you look outside?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned you observed something. What did you observe outside the second time?
It was just a body in the grass.
Okay. And the body that was in the grass, could you tell if the body was face up or face down?
I remember it being face down.
Okay. Did you see anybody else other than the body face down on the grass at that time?
No.
Okay. Doing everything that you've described at this time, did you hear any kind of shot?
When I went to take the stove off, that's when the shot occurred.
Okay. After you heard a shot and after you went to the sliding door and observed somebody on the ground, did you do anything in terms of notifying your sister or your niece or your niece's friend, or what did you do?
Once I looked out the sliding glass door and saw the body, I took the dog and went upstairs and spoke to my sister. I said, I think someone shot.
Okay. At some point while you were upstairs, did you hear and see the police come out there?
After I spoke to her and I went back downstairs, there were flashlights outside and it was the police outside.
Okay. Did you yourself ever that evening go outside?
No.
Okay. At some point, were you also later interviewed by the police and later some law enforcement officer officials?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you some photographs. If I could, Your Honor, with the court's permission, may the court dim the lights. Thank you. And if can you see that from where you're at?
Yes.
Do you see that there?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to, as best I can, enlarge an area there. Do you recognize that area there as the area where you lived back in February of 2012?
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm looking at that right there, would it be in the, I think we can use this to get, is it right here, would you have been living in this right here that I'm circling? In other words, your townhome would have been right there?
Yes.
Okay. And so that would be the third down from right here from the T?
Yes.
Is that correct right there? Okay. And you mentioned that you went out, or I'm sorry, you did not go out, but you looked out the sliding door. Would the movement that you saw, or I'm sorry, you heard, would it have been coming from in this direction that I'm going to right here? In other words, this is the back of your residence right here. Would it have been going this way?
Yes.
Okay. So in that photograph right there would have been going up, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to need some assistance, Your Honor, if I may. Sorry. No, I think I just need somebody that's more adept at this than I am. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I'm going to show you states 3 and specifically your house from right there where you were living in February. You cannot see that. Is that correct from there? Or can you see it?
I can't see my house.
Okay. State Exhibit 4 is, would your residence have been in this area right here that I'm circling right there? In other words, is this from the T going into the corner and then 2 houses down around this area right here? Can you see it clearly from that photograph is what I'm trying to ask you?
No.
Okay. And that's for the record, I apologize, it's Stage Exhibit 4. Stage Exhibit 5, are we getting closer to where your residence be? If this is the corner right here, you would have been down 2?
Yes.
Okay. And it's still not very visible in that photograph, is that correct, Stage Exhibit 5?
Correct.
Stage Exhibit 11, this have been the back porch that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so this would have been your residence back in February of 2012, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you mentioned you looked out the sliding door, did you yourself go out into the porch to look out, or did you remain in the sliding door?
In the sliding door.
And when you mentioned movement from the back of your residence that you heard and then actually observed people, it was coming from the end of this photograph right here, Stage Exhibit 11, going across, is that correct?
Yes.
Stage Exhibit 37, I know that is a daytime photograph, but would this again show the residence back in February of 2012 right here that I'm circling it right here?
Yes.
Okay, and the movement was coming this way, is that correct? Towards the top of the T there?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you Stage Exhibit 38. Again, would your the residence back in February would have been right here?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm through with the photographs, Your Honor. Turn this off. And may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence in State Exhibit 139. And I'm going to ask you if you recognize this in terms of your address at that time was 2841, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the movement that you would have seen would have been coming this way, is that correct?
Yes.
I apologize. This would have been 2841, correct? And this is your backyard facing out towards the dogway or path?
Yes.
And you said it was from left to right going this way, is that correct?
Yes, from
Okay.
left to right.
Ms. Balador, I'm going to put a sticker where 2841, if I got the right place, back in February of 2012, where you were residing, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I apologize, I put that on State's Exhibit 139 for the record. I want to, if I could, move on to another subject other than that February 26th of 2012. Specifically, back in 2011, the latter part of 2011 and prior to February 26th of 2012, had you seen a person by the name of George Zimmerman in the retreat at Twin Lakes Townhomes?
I've seen him, yes.
And did you know him as a Crime Watch person or individual?
Yes.
Okay. Had he come a few months before, specifically before that February, handing out flyers about Crime Watch
Yes.
or Neighborhood Watch?
Yes.
Okay. And did he introduce himself as a Neighborhood Watch person?
Yes.
Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor? I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Cross.
I'll take a couple of minutes to get ready. I don't know if the court's anticipating the break or not. We're just going to go
I
through.
wasn't, but
Might I just have a moment then?
yes, you may.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
couple of questions. Who's the last person you talked to about your testimony here today, before today?
What do you mean?
Who was the last person you spoke with about your testimony before you came here today to give it?
The last people I spoke with was TC and
TC. Let's be a bit more formal if we might. Let's talk about his last name. Do you know it?
not
That's
offhand.
presuming that that's T.C. Osteen. Is he an investigator with the State Attorney's Office, 4th
Yes.
Judicial Circuit? When was the last time you spoke to him about your testimony?
We met on Thursday.
Okay, how much time did you spend with him?
Maybe about 45 minutes.
Okay. Did you tell him that you had heard noises moving from, as you say now, today, left to right?
What do you mean?
Okay. Today, you're testifying that you heard some noise out the back of your house and that you thought it was moving from your left to your right, correct?
Correct.
Did you tell him that last Thursday?
We didn't discuss that, but at
Okay.
during the initial investigation, I did.
Well, you spoke to T.C. Osteen about that?
When we did talk.
And that was this past Thursday?
No, it wasn't this past Thursday.
Okay, when
We
was
were
it?
just this past Thursday. We were talking about the upcoming trial.
Okay. And presumably what your testimony was going to be, correct?
No, just making sure that I remembered what I said.
Your testimony.
Yes.
Did he go over with you your statements?
No, I read my statements.
Ah. Did he give them to you to read?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about which statements he gave you to read. Did he give you, for example, the statement that you gave to Sanford Police Department to review?
There was a tape.
Okay, he listened to the tape, right?
No, it was transcribed.
You read the transcript, correct?
Yes.
In that transcript, I'm sorry, when did you give that statement?
It was back in February of 2012.
Very close to this event, correct?
Yes.
Quite shortly thereafter.
Yes.
Okay. In that statement, and I just want to focus on this for just a few questions. In that statement, did you tell Sanford Police Department that you heard noise moving from left to right?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, you had a chance to look at it Thursday. I can have you review it today, but do you remember telling Investigator Serino, your first statement that you ever talked about this case, anything whatsoever, at all, about hearing a noise that moved from left to right?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I might have just a moment, Your Honor.
May?
The transcript, was that something prepared by the State Attorney's Office?
Which transcript?
The one that you reviewed, that you told us about just a minute ago?
Well, there were several.
Okay. Let me have one marked, and I'm going to give it to you. See if this refreshes your recollection, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to focus on when you're reviewing this transcript is where, if at all, you told Investigator Serino anything about this movement from left to right, okay?
I'm going to object at this time. I don't believe that's the same transcript
Well,
that
would
this
you want to
is.
show it to counsel?
Sure, but that's not its purpose. It's not a...
I don't need a comment, I just need you to show it to counsel.
Yeah, I'm not agreeing. This is the same transcript that this witness has reviewed.
Okay, if you want to approach.
waiting, I guess,
Yes.
I'll just ask a few more questions, not to take too much time. Is it your specific memory today that you told Investigator Sereno this noise movement from left to right? Or do you just not remember?
I believe I mentioned the noise. I don't know if at that time I said which direction.
Okay, you mentioned the noise, something like either saying no or something like ooh ah, your words. Is that about what you remember telling Investigator Sereno?
That's part of the conversation.
Okay. Something else. You said they were running in the back. Remember that?
I probably would have said there were movement in the back.
They were what?
Movement in the back.
Your words. I'm just repeating them. Did you say, let me ask it this way. Who's the first person that you actually do remember saying the words, they were moving from left to right, presuming it wasn't just here in your testimony today? Who's the last person you said that to? I'm sorry, I apologize. Who was the first person you said that to?
I have no idea.
Okay. We're going to find an exact transcript of your conversation with Officer Sereno, so we're going to come back to that. But you also spoke with John Batchelor from FDLE, correct? Remember that?
Yes.
That was 3 weeks after your conversation with Investigator Sereno?
Yes.
John Batchelor's with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, right? And,
Okay.
and they were doing an investigation where they came back and talked to you again. Do you recall that?
Yes.
When you sat with T.C. Osteen last Thursday, did you also review the transcript of your conversation with John Batchelor from FDLE?
We didn't sit down and review any, I just reviewed them on my own.
I'm sorry. He made sure you had them
Yes.
and that you would look them over.
Yes.
So when I say review them, I don't mean that he sat with you sentence by sentence or word by word. What I mean is that you had an opportunity to review all of your written statements in this case, correct?
I didn't have any written statements.
Well, the transcripts.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. That included the transcript we're about to get with Officer Sereno, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the one with Investigator Batchelor I just mentioned to you, correct?
Just give me 1 second. Your last answer, you have to give a verbal answer for the court reporter.
Yes.
Okay. So you looked over those two. You also looked over your deposition testimony, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember in any of your 12-page statement with John Batchelor ever mentioning anything about movement going from left to right?
I can't remember.
Does that mean no, or does that mean today you don't recall whether or not you told him?
Today, I don't recall if I told him that.
We're in a similar position. I do have something I'd like to mark and approach the witness with to have her review it. I'll forward a copy to the state. It's a similar transcript as earlier, but I think it serves its purpose for refreshing her recollection. It's a transcript. This is pen.
This is the FDLE, Mr. O'Hara.
Okay.
Yes.
We're gonna, I apologize.
Approach.
Ms. Bobbitt, what we'll do is actually give you official transcripts of these to make sure that these are the ones that you had a chance to review. So we're going to wait on that for just a few minutes, and we'll come back. After I ask you this question, in your deposition that we took of you, one of the transcripts you reviewed, that was more recently, wasn't it? Just a few months ago.
Yes.
In that deposition, do you recall taking the deposition?
Yes.
You were there and you remember your answers?
I remember taking the deposition.
Okay. The same deposition that you had an ability to review that transcript last Thursday. That's the deposition I'm talking to you about.
Okay.
Okay. Do you remember reviewing that deposition transcript?
Yes.
Okay. Anywhere in that deposition transcript do you remember telling me, Mr. West, Mr. Delriando, who questioned you after we did, anything at all about movement from left to right?
I don't remember.
Okay. So I ask you once again, when was the first time, and tell me if it was today, when was the first time you ever told anybody that you heard or saw, whatever it was, movement from left to right outside of your back door? Was it today? And if so, just tell us.
I don't know if it was just today.
Okay. I'll ask it this way. Could it be that the first time you mentioned this new piece of evidence was just now as you've testified?
It could be. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we seem to have the transcripts. So, if I might,
We just approach the bench.
Yes, you may.
As a record of what we're providing.
Remarks for identification purposes. I guess this would be N, O, and P. And
Yes, you may.
now I want to do this in order, so I'm going to hand you this and ask if you can identify that. Oh, I'm sorry, it is letter N, Exhibit N for identification purposes. Can you identify that for me, ma'am?
It's the telephone interview.
And that's the same transcript that you looked at last Thursday, correct?
Yes.
And how many times have you met with the state attorney's office before last Thursday?
I believe 2 or 3 times.
Okay. Tell me about those. When were they? We have last Thursday when you met with T.C. Osteen. Anybody else in that meeting?
Yes, my sister.
Together?
Yes.
In the same room?
Yes.
Discussing testimony?
No, not discussing, just making sure we were comfortable.
Oh, okay. For 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Time
Yes.
before that?
want to know when?
The last time you talked, you said 2 or 3 other times. Last time you talked to anyone from the state attorney's office about your testimony here today.
I don't know what day or month.
What'd you talk about?
We did the deposition.
Talked about the deposition?
Yes.
Okay. Talked about what you said in deposition?
We were in the deposition.
Okay, so you
That's
met
when I-
before the deposition.
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. Is the other meeting you're talking about the actual deposition itself?
Yes.
Okay. You met with them just before the deposition as well, though, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So that was another time where you talked about your testimony just before I took your, or Mr. West took your deposition, correct?
What do you, I don't understand.
I'll
what
phrase it
you're
this
asking.
way. One of the investigators picked you up from your house and brought you to the courtroom, and they gave you your previous statements to review.
Yes.
And they talked to you about them, correct or no?
Yes.
Okay. So that's Thursday, just before your deposition, and what about the time before that?
It was when the state decided to. It was when the state decided that they had to do the investigation, so then we met then.
Okay. So, you have in front of you just didn't know how it got filled up. You have before you a transcript of your investigation, I'm sorry, your statement on March 1st, 2012 with investigator Serino. You knew him to be the chief investigating officer in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Review that if you would, as you did last Thursday. Point me to the part in this 4-page document where you tell Investigator Serino, back in March 2012, that you heard movement going from left to right.
Page 2. Oh. It didn't mention left to right.
I'm sorry?
It did not mention left to right.
Okay. Matter of fact, on page 2, you say that you couldn't see either one of them, correct?
Impeachment?
Sustained.
Back then, did you tell Investigator Serino whether or not you could even see anybody out there?
I said I couldn't really see back there because there wasn't a lot of lights on back there. All I saw was arms flailing.
So, for this line of questions, I want to stay we'll come back to this, but I want to stay very specific to the issue concerning the movement. Doesn't exist in that statement, does it?
Movement or?
Well, I'm sorry, testimony concerning movement from left to right. Let me be more specific, I apologize. Does it exist anywhere in your first statement to Investigator Serino that you mentioned anything about movement of some people or persons from left to right outside of your townhome?
It says they were running in the back.
Okay. Is that a no?
It says they were running in the back. I didn't mention left to right.
Now, when you say they, of course, you're talking only what you hear. You did not see anything, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you say they're running, you're talking about only what you hear.
Correct.
Okay. Now let's just move forward as to that issue until 3 weeks later with the testimony with John Batchelor on March 20th, 2012. And let me show you what we've marked as Defendant's Exhibit M for identification purposes. It's a little bit longer. I'm going to have you take a moment to look at it. But for right now, just with the focus is whether or not that movement issue is discussed, okay? Tell us when you've reviewed the entire statement, if you would.
Okay.
Can you point me to the page in the line area where you mention the movement from left to right? Is it in there?
No, I see that I mentioned that I heard movement.
And if you would just point me to where you're talking about with that so I can see what you're saying.
Page 9.
If you would, maybe give me just the first sentence.
It says it was dark. It's the last SB on that line, on that page.
Okay, there you say it was just so dark out there, I just saw movement. Is that what you're speaking about? Is that what you
Yeah.
just referenced to me?
Yes, but
Okay. That,
I don't think that is.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Answer.
I don't think that's in reference to the initial movement. I think it's to the arms.
I was going to clear that up and I interrupted you and I apologize. That was actually when you went back out the second time, went to the sliding glass door after you heard the conversation with John Good, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not what we're talking about now, is it?
Correct.
Okay. It does not exist in this statement either, does it? Any suggestion by you that there was movement from left to right?
It wasn't mentioned.
And now let me approach, if I might, with Defendant's Exhibit O for identification purposes, which is a transcript of the deposition, and ask if you could review that. Again, the focus of this line of questioning being solely on the issue of where in that deposition you mentioned movement from left to right.
I don't see mention of left to right.
So I ask again, when was the first time, or was it literally today? I'll ask you this way. Was today the first time that you ever said to anybody throughout all of your statements and involvement in this case, including your meetings with the State Attorney's Office on at least 3 occasions, that there was movement from left to right? Was today the first time?
Well, based on these transcripts, it was the first time being recorded.
Well,
Yes.
No, I'm asking you right here today, was this the first time that you ever mentioned to anybody that there was movement from left to right?
No.
And then the question would be, who was the first person that you told that to?
When I talked to my sister.
When you spoke to your sister about this event?
Yes, when it first occurred.
Okay. We'll get to her shortly. But you did not, I'll say it this way, you did not tell anyone in law enforcement, including the State Attorney's Office and their investigators, about movement from left to right until your testimony here today?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any reason?
No, I know I must have mentioned it. It's just not in the transcript because that's what I remember.
And we are now speaking of only what you heard, correct? You did not see anything out there?
Correct.
So let's go back to that. So you're at the kitchen cooking, right? And you hear some noise. Is that the first thing that causes you to have some attention to what was going out there on February 26th, 2012?
Yes.
Okay. Nobody else was there with you, right? Your sister was in the apartment, but not right there in the kitchen with you, right?
Yes.
Nor was your niece, who was upstairs with a friend in the front?
Correct.
Okay. As we talk about your sister, she never saw or heard anything about this, did she?
I don't know what she saw.
Well, you were there, right? Was she?
She was upstairs. I was downstairs.
Okay. She would not have seen anything from the perspective that you had seen it, correct? She didn't see it from downstairs at least, right?
Correct.
So that were she to come in and say that she saw anything about this event from the downstairs area, that would not be true?
Correct.
Did she tell you that she duplicated your story as to what happened out there that night?
What do you mean?
When you talked to her, as you said you did your sister tell you that she didn't see anything, but was going to say that she did?
Exactly. This point is hearsay as to what her sister
Sustained.
told her.
So you're talking now about cooking, and you hear a noise. Tell me the noise again.
It sounds like no or something along that line.
Okay. And what did you do in response to that?
I looked out the window.
And you couldn't see,
Looked out the window.
and you couldn't see anything, correct?
Correct.
And why was that?
Because it was dark.
All right. Now, we've spent some time showing the jury sort of where you are. You are to orient us without using the map for a moment. If you go out your door and look off to your left, I'm sorry, your right, across the path, that's where John Good lives?
Yes.
And then beyond them is Miss Lauer, correct?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. So, as you're looking now across that area, it is too dark for you to see anybody? Is that accurate?
What do you mean?
The first time, when you looked out the first time, you heard a noise, caught your attention, you looked out the window, and you couldn't see anything because it was too dark. Is that accurate?
I couldn't identify figures. I couldn't identify who it was out there.
Could you even tell that it was people at that point?
I can tell it was people.
And how far away were they from you?
They were a house down and over.
A house down and over. Would that put them then, when you say a house down, we're talking towards the now known as the T intersection?
Yes.
And when you say over, you mean towards John Good's apartment?
Yes.
On the other side of the path?
It was in the pathway.
At the pathway?
Yes.
But right out in front of John Good's door? Is that accurate?
At the time I first saw, it was in the pathway.
Right out from John Good's door, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If I might approach the display just for a moment. You do this in a way where we can all see it, hopefully. This is you, of course, right?
Yes.
You came out here and looked. Oh, so you looked through a window? Is that accurate?
I initially looked through the window.
Where's the window? I'm going to just lean it down so you just point to the window.
Here.
So you looked out this window here, correct?
Yes.
And this is, what is this right here?
That's the fenced-in porch.
The screened-in enclosure
Yes.
with a screen?
Yes.
Any shades or blinds on it?
No.
Okay. So you looked through here, correct? Is that about this area here? Who lives here? Is that John Good?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that they were a house down and across the path? Is that your testimony?
A house down and in the path. Yes.
Let me ask you this. Did you see the people? Were they about here when you saw them? Could that be right?
Yes.
Okay. So they could have been right there when you first saw these people
Yes.
that I think you said you saw flailing.
Yes.
You couldn't tell if they were standing up or laying down, right?
They looked erect. They looked standing.
They looked erect to you back then?
Yes. They
What do you
looked
mean by
stand-
that?
They looked standing.
Did one of them look standing or both of them? Let me ask you this way. Could one have been on top of the other, kneeling down over him? Maybe like this?
I couldn't determine that.
Could they be like this?
I couldn't determine that.
Okay. Too dark?
Yes.
And it was at that time, well, when you first looked out, we just talked about that, then a few, did you say, and I don't mean to jump around on you, but at some point you moved over towards the sliding glass door, I think you said about 15 seconds later or so?
When I saw the individuals, I was at the sliding glass door. I didn't see anybody from the window.
I apologize. I thought we were just talking about what you saw out the window. So out the window you saw nothing?
Correct.
And only the second time so you saw nothing. Second time when you went to the sliding glass door was when you saw the people where we just identified?
Yes.
Okay. It was at that time that you heard John Good say something to them?
Yes.
Okay. And I think what you said he said was, I'm calling the police, or words such as that, right?
Something to that, yes.
Okay. And then what'd you do next?
After he said that, I went back to take the stove off.
Okay. didn't do anything else related to this particular event going on outside until you heard noise now identified as a gunshot. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Didn't see anything else, didn't even look to see anything else, correct?
Not when I went back to the stove.
Right. Let's just follow that train of thought for a moment and say, when you went back, what did you do when you heard the gunshot?
I looked out the sliding glass door, grabbed a dog, and went upstairs.
Was that the second time you looked out the sliding glass door?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you see then?
It was a body.
Okay, what else?
That's all I remember.
Just one body?
Yes.
Did you see a man with a flashlight?
No.
Did you see Mr. Zimmerman staggering about?
No.
Lights still quite poor?
Yes.
And at that point, having heard the gunshot, you just, again, sort of retreated, go back upstairs where your sister was?
Yes.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. Was there any reason why when was the first time that you gave a statement to anyone about this?
The first time I gave a statement was the community had a town hall about the event. And
Okay.
I gave a statement that day.
You know that you witnessed the shooting on February 26th, correct?
I didn't think what I saw was significant, or what I heard was significant.
Okay. You found out the next day that there was a shooting, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you know that you at least saw some of it, correct?
Yes.
Did you like in the Facebook term, Justice for Trayvon Martin page? Correct? You did, right?
Probably, yes.
Okay, just curious. Would I be accurate in suggesting that you certainly have a feeling of sympathy for the Martin family?
I have sympathy for both.
Okay. But you liked the Trayvon Martin, Justice for Trayvon Martin Facebook. You didn't like the Joe Zimmerman Facebook, did you? Like in the Facebook terminology?
Correct.
So with your sympathy for both, why did you not do both and just do Mr. Trayvon's Justice for Trayvon page?
The opportunity didn't present itself.
Okay. I'm sorry, I approached the witness without your permission. I'll just show you
Yes, you
again.
may do so.
Any objection to being admitted?
Yeah, I object to being there.
Okay.
Okay. Show her to refresh her memory.
Sorry.
I have no objection.
If it was indiscovered, I apologize. Could
No,
you,
we have conversations, it has to be through me. I will refer you again to the court's order.
yes, Your Honor, I
Thank you.
apologize.
Could you
you take a look at that and tell me if you can identify it?
Yes.
What is that?
Drawing, a sketch I did.
That's what you did, correct?
Correct.
And is that accurate? Is that an accurate copy of the sketch that you drew for the officers?
Yes.
Any changes on it except for the addition of the exhibit?
Correct.
It's correct, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
it's correct.
I would move this into evidence, Your Honor, now being identified by the witness as the sketch that she drew.
Okay, any objections?
Same objection, Your Honor, in terms of that we have briefly discussed.
Okay, well, please
Our case in
approach.
chief.
Please approach. Yes, you may.
This is now in evidence. I'd like to ask you some questions about it. Firstly, can you tell me the date that you prepared that?
It's dated March 20th, 12.
Okay. And if you could just describe what that is intending to show.
Where my house is located in reference to where I believe I saw arms. Arms?
I see a notation of arms identified on that document. The designation, if I'm looking at it with the orientation of the writing, top left corner is your house, correct? That's the house that we've been talking about?
Correct.
And then you look across the pathway to where you have his second house, and you further identify it as John Good's house, correct?
Yes.
Then I see a hedge and then the second house screen, correct?
And the house screen.
End house screen, I'm sorry. Thought that was a 2. And that is, in fact, the end of that row of houses, correct?
Correct.
And this was a picture of what you saw the only time you saw people out there, correct?
Correct.
Remember to retrieve the exhibit, Connor? You had stated on a previous occasion that you could not make out any words whatsoever from what you heard outside. Is that correct?
Correct. The only words I can remember is no,
Or an ooh-ah kind of sound?
yes.
Could they have, were they screams?
It was a screaming noise with that sound.
You have heard, I'm presuming, what we now identify as the 911 call, correct? Have you ever heard that tape
On the media?
on the media?
Yes.
Okay. You heard the,
Yes.
were those screams similar to the screams that you say that you heard? Or are they different?
They're similar.
Could they in fact have been the same screams?
Yes.
Again, just a moment, Your Honor, maybe getting close
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
end. You have testified about the word flailing, and then I note also on your sketch you mentioned the word arms. Can you tell us a bit more about what you saw when you saw arms flailing?
I just saw our arms moving up and down.
Like this?
Yes.
Is that, and I move for the jury's benefit, my arms up and down in
Yes.
this type of movement? And don't say yes just because I did it. If it was something different, tell me it's different. But is that what you saw up and down?
It was more like this.
Okay.
Fast pace.
Okay. Just a moment, Your Honor, I may be done. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor, for the questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Your Honor, and with the court's permission, I have a question witness regarding the documents that Mr. O'Mara showed us.
Yes, you may.
Purpose of the record, I'm going to be showing the witness what's been marked just for identification purposes as M like in Mary, N like in Nancy, and O like in Oscar. Ma'am, I'm going to show you those three exhibits, starting off with N like in Nancy, M like in Mary, and O like in Oscar. Mr. O'Mara, well, before I get into that, this happened back in February of 26 of 2012, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. O'Mara asked you about that you came forward I believe is when they had a town hall meeting, like at the retreat at Twin Lakes, the clubhouse, the police were asking if anybody has seen anything. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when it originally happened, you didn't go out there and say, hey, I want to be a witness and I want to get on national TV, did you?
Correct.
You wanted to remain silent. You didn't want to get involved at all. Is that true?
Correct.
Now, regarding the one question that Mr. O'Mara repeatedly asked you, and he asked you to reference the three documents that you have in front of you. I believe they're M, like in Mary, N like in Nancy, and O like in Oscar. I believe N that is in front of you is the statement that you gave, a transcript of the statement you gave Investigator Chris Serino. Did Investigator Chris Serino ever ask you the movement that you saw when you described on page 2, specifically when you said, I heard noise, I was screaming noise, and I thought it was kids playing in the back house, they normally do. And then it sounded like somebody was saying either no or hum, and they were running in the back. Did Mr. Serino specifically say when they were running, tell me which direction were they running? Did he ever ask you that?
No.
Ma'am, now what I want to reference, the next part is the investigator, I'm sorry, that should be Exhibit M in front of you, like Mary. When you were asked again about by Investigator John Baxter with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to draw a picture, you recall that? And they asked you in terms of the arms flailing, did that investigator ask you at any time when you described the running or what occurred to tell him which way the running was, from left to right or right to left? Did they ever ask you that?
No.
Okay. And finally, ma'am, in the deposition that Mr. West took where I was present and where Mr. O'Mara was present, and that should be State's Defense, I'm sorry, what's been marked for identification purposes, Defense Exhibit O, is the thick one, that I believe is a total of 30, let me get it right, 31 pages. On page 5 of that deposition, you see there on the top, when you stated, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner, I heard some running and garbled scream. That's what caught my attention. Question, did the running and garbled scream seem to be happening at the same time? Yes. Did Mr. West or Mr. O'Mara ever ask you what direction was the running, from left to right or right to left?
No.
You recall later on that same page 5 there, you stating it sounded just like running, so I would say yes, it sounded like feet on the ground. You recall that answer that you gave?
Yes.
Did Mr. O'Mara or did Mr. West ever ask you which direction was the running coming from?
No.
Okay. Do you recall in that same deposition stating, when being asked, you distinguish any words specifically on page 5 of that deposition, and you saying, in terms of no, the word you only heard was no? Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to reference that same deposition on page 10, ma'am. Your answer in terms of being described, what was going on when the figures were up there. So they looked like they were in a standing position, or they were bent over, standing over straight. Do you recall giving that answer? On page number 10, I'm sorry, page 10, under number 5 through 9. Do you recall stating they were, it looked like they were in a standing position?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, may I have a moment? And do you recall on page 17 of that deposition where Mr. West was asking you questions about that diagram, which I believe is the last exhibit that you were showing, clarifying that on page 17, line 17, clarifying that the diagram is backwards? Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Just let me follow up. Mr. Deleon suggested that the reason why you waited, I guess, a week or so was because you didn't want to just, I think his words were, run out and be a witness on national TV. And you said yes?
Correct.
Yeah. You've actually been on national TV about this case, though, haven't you?
I did.
Go ahead.
I did a video, but it was never broadcast.
But you wanted to be on national TV. Let me ask it that way.
No, I didn't want to. They actually spoke with me for about 30 minutes before I decided to say anything.
And that was with, I think, Matt Gutman or somebody, right?
Yes.
They came in and they videotaped you and you talked all about the case, right?
They were combing the neighborhood to find out more about what happened.
Okay. So it wasn't really your reason for not rushing to the law enforcement to tell them what you knew about this case really wasn't you just hiding from the spotlight of national news, was it?
I don't understand your question.
I'm following up on Mr. Delaranda said that the reason why you didn't go talk to law enforcement right away and waited a while was because you didn't want to be on national TV and just become some superstar witness. And I'm curious that since you said yes to that, why you decided to go on national TV anyway?
To do the broadcasting, that
Yes.
I was only doing it so they can bring attention to what had happened.
Okay. Which was that you thought George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin
I've never said that.
improperly, and he should be prosecuted for it, right?
I've never said that.
Why'd you sign the petition at change.org that said, I am hereby in favor, by signing the petition, of prosecute the killer of our son, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin? You did sign that petition, right? I'll show you Facebook.
I did
photo.
like.
You signed
So
the petition.
saying like means I signed the petition?
No. In addition to liking, I'm asking you now if you signed the change.org petition. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. Show it to counsel, please.
Let me show you this. First of all, it's just your Facebook, correct? That's your page?
Yes.
Okay, and that, can you tell me what that says right?
You're blocking the view of the first one, turn to the side, thank you.
Tell me what that says on your Facebook front page right there. Just read that.
Prosecute the killer of our son, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Sign the petition.
I'm curious one last thing. Since this only came up today, for the first time that you talked to anybody about it, how did you know to answer Mr. Delaranda's questions in a way that got out information that's never been mentioned before?
I don't understand your question.
This is the first time you've talked to anyone about it by your own testimony, correct?
To anybody about the Facebook?
The movement. No, I'm sorry, I apologize. The movement from left to right? Just curious how you knew that today was the day that that evidence, having never been spoken from your lips before, today was the day that that should come out.
I was just saying what I remembered.
Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. May Ms. Bahador be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You are excused. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for the evening while you're getting your notepads to close up and put on the chair. I'm going to remind you over the recess tonight, you're not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. You're not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. You're not to use any type of electronic device to do any independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, or blogs about the case. Do I have everybody's assurance that they'll abide by these instructions? Is there anybody who feels they cannot do so? Okay, we'll begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you'll please follow Deputy Jarvis outside the courtroom. Leave your notepads face down. Councilors, please be seated. Is there anything that we need to take up before we recess for the evening?
30 seconds with the court at the bench.
Yes. Council, is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess for the evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, court will be in recess till 9 a.m.